This takes place in 1994 Poland. Myself and several friends were poking around in one of the areas that, because of the Soviet occupation, no one had been in for a couple of decades. Because of this, it was all overgrown and wild. So we were armed with a mix of rifles, pistols, and knives. I personally had brought along one of my uncle's Karabiner S. We hiked into the forest from the edge of an old fence line. A couple of kilometers in, we found an old asphalt road. It was cracked and weathered with trees starting to grow up through the roadbed, but we decided to follow it in. It ended about 7 kilometers later at a large grassy clearing where we chose to camp that night. In the morning, we noticed that something had paced around the perimeter of our camp. The grass was bent down and flattened from where it had walked. We didn't think much of it though, thought it was deer. We packed up and continued on into the forest. We decided to hike up the side of a mountain which we could see from the clearing. Get above the trees and see what we could see. As we walked, I felt like we were being watched. We reached a good spot to look around from, not far from where we had camped. We could see another clearing with some kind of a concrete structure there. So we hiked back and made our way to that direction. At the edge of the camp clearing, we found another old road that led in that direction. At the other clearing, the road we were following dipped down into a cut and led to a concrete bunker. After a brief discussion, we decided it was too small to be what we saw from the mountain, and so continued further into the clearing. We didn't walk long before we were on top of a large concrete pad. There was a massive four-way door atop it that was partially open. If it were to fully open, I think you could easily drive an oversized hauler through it with room to spare. We looked down in it, but it was really too dark to see anything except a couple flickering lights down at the bottom, and a reflection off the waterway down at the bottom. Machinery and a missile cradled by a bunch of machinery. It was too dark to tell how intact everything was. We threw a couple of rocks in and they bounced off some stuff before they fell splashing into the water at the bottom. We made our way to the edge of the pad to discuss things again. We decided that since there was power, but it was obviously abandoned, might as well explore. So we went back to the bunker door we found. I and a couple of my friends worked the door, while the others got flashlights ready, since we weren't sure what to expect regarding lighting. Because we didn't have any tools, it was harder to get open, but we managed with a couple of sticks and a pipe we found lying around. The door opened with a hissing whoosh, as the air pressure was different inside than out. At first we thought it was a snake or something and jumped back. After letting the air inside and out mix, and let the feeling of being idiots go away, we pulled the door fully open and looked inside. There was a layer of dust inside, and there were more lights on in here than in the silo. Walls were painted flat gray, Cyrillic writing on the walls just inside. None of us were really any good with Russian, and our bad translation was something like, West Missile Station, Anti-Capitalist Array. I got pushed into going in first because I was the only one with a semi-automatic weapon. The complex itself really wasn't that big. Maybe a little larger than a 2-bedroom apartment. There was a room with 2 sets of bunk bed cots, no mattresses, but there were steel footlockers with nothing in them bolted to the floor. The room across from this was a kitchen and dining area. Heavy iron table, electric stove, and folding chairs. Then a hallway to a command room with an armored window into the silo itself. The hum of electricity was the strongest in the command room. An entire wall was dedicated to a large control panel and old analog computer, like the ones from Team Fortress 2 that informs the soldier about the blue spy in the base. Its monitor was like that. Some of the bulbs were broken, so I don't know what they would have indicated. They were all in block Cyrillic letters and easier to translate, but the ones that were dimly lit up were silo doors, stopped, obstruction, and in and on tracks. I don't remember what the others said. Under the window into the silo, there was a flip clock that was paused at 2 minutes and 34 seconds with a red light next to it. And there was no actual launch button that we could find. There was another door that we couldn't get open to look around deeper in the silo. So after poking around a bit and double checking for anything interesting, we made our way out and back towards where we had camped the night before. All the while, I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. We set up camp and went to sleep. To this day, I don't know if it was a dream or if it actually happened, but something was laying atop me and just watching me. No one else in the camp, just me. It was heavy, and I couldn't move anyways. But the eyes, they looked smart. I don't know what. When we woke up, the camp was torn apart. Our food was missing and the cooking supplies we had were scattered all over. And something had walked through the camp, its paws digging into the earth beneath. 2 of our weapons were missing as well, a revolver and a hunting rifle. We were all freaked out. Between the food being gone and a storm looking like it was coming in, we decided to hike out that day. About 2 kilometers of hiking, the storm hit and it began raining. As though the sky itself was angry at our trespassing. We had not packed for the rain, so we were wet, hungry, and tired. I still felt like I was being watched. Our hike was slow and tiring. We reached about where we thought we'd found the road and began hiking out. Everything looked different, but there were some kind of knife marks we'd made in the trees to mark our passage. A couple of kilometers where we expected the edge of the forest to be, we tripped over our food, well, the containers, and some of the vegetables, all neatly stacked and out in the open, like it had been left for us to find. After we got over trying to wrap our minds around it, we began walking with our weapons ready. Not long after we found our food, we saw something. It looked like a dog or fox, but it was far too large, like a small car, too long, and the fur was a fake-looking silver like a cheap wig. When it opened its mouth, there were far too many teeth. It smiled at us. At least I think it was smiling. And just wandered off into the woods. After a mild panic attack, we started walking again, hiking a bit faster than we should have. It didn't take long for us to be running in a panic. I don't know how long it took us to get out of that forest, but we did. A couple of my friends went to the authorities and told them about the wolf in the woods. I think they told the whole story, though. A couple of days later, they were just gone. Their parents were shaken and knew something, but wouldn't say or even acknowledge they had a child. They were just gone. Even now, I think it was the remnants of the KGB keeping secrets. I only went into those woods once more after that. My curiosity got the better of me a couple of years later. I never found the road or whatever that fox was. I returned home. I've held this story close since then, but I think it's safe to tell now. But I don't know. I might get woken up by a bag over the head. I don't know.